In 1918, Empress Alexandra and her family faced a firing squad, but when the smoke cleared, the soldiers saw the execution had gone horribly, horribly wrong. Alexandra Fyodorovna was a princess of Germany and an empress of Russia, but none of this privilege saved her from a tragic fate. As one of the last Romanovs, she fell victim first to the dark charms of Rasputin and then to the Russian Revolution. Alexandra didn't need a man to give her a royal title. She was born Princess Alex of Hesse and the Rhine on June 6, 1872, to Grand Duke Louis IV and Princess Alice of the United Kingdom. She was the second youngest in a large family of 7, and her siblings and parents loved doting on her. She was more than just a blue blood. Her maternal grandmother was none other than Queen Victoria, and Alexandra was apparently Victoria's favorite granddaughter. Like her husband, Tsar Nicholas II, Alexandra was a firm believer in the divine right to rule. In her view, God gave monarchs absolute power, and it didn't matter to her that most European nations were moving away from this belief. As her aunt once wrote, "Alex is very imperious and will always insist on having her own way. She will never yield one iota of power." As a child, Alexandra's mother nicknamed her Sunny for her happy, smiling disposition. Later, her besotted husband, Nicholas II, also took up the practice as a pet name for his wife. Alexandra was a headstrong woman. Rumor has it that her grandmother, Queen Victoria, wanted her to become a future Queen of England. But the young girl wasn't willing to marry just anyone. She rejected a proposal from her cousin, the Duke of Clarence and Avondale, even when the family pressured her to say yes. Growing up, Alexandra's family hid a dark secret. The men of their royal line tended to suffer from the often fatal disease, hemophilia, an illness that prevents blood from clotting. When Alexandra was barely a year old, her hemophiliac brother Frederick died after a nasty fall. Meanwhile, the women of the line were often carriers of the gene, including Alexandra herself. Beth visited the royal house of Hesse in 1878. A violent outbreak of diphtheria entered the palace, and many of the children fell ill, along with their father Louis. Alexandra was among them. Her mother, Princess Alice, refused to leave their sides and nursed most of them back to health, but her loyalty came at a great cost. In December of that year, Alice took ill and died along with Alexandra's most beloved sister Marie. The young Alexandra was reportedly so bereft at the loss that her whole personality turned from cheerful to solemn. Later in her life, the nervous and fear-racked Empress was addicted to veronal, a kind of sedative. The romantic love story of Alexandra and her husband, Tsar Nicholas II, is one for the ages. They first met at her sister's wedding in 1884, when Alexandra was only 12 years old. Over the years, they grew closer and closer, and soon they were very much in love. Nicholas even spoke of her with aching adoration in his diary. He wrote, "It's my dream to one day marry Alex. I've loved her for a long time. For a long time, I have resisted my feeling that my dearest dream will come true." Nicholas and Alexandra may have loved each other fiercely, but they were in for heartbreak at first. Nicholas's parents, Alexandra and Maria, were staunchly anti-German and refused him flat out when he asked to marry her. As for Alexandra's side of the family, Queen Victoria wasn't too pleased either, as she personally detested Nicholas's father. When Nicholas finally proposed to Alexandra, her response was completely unexpected. She refused. Though she loved him, she was nervous about converting from her Lutheran religion to Russian Orthodoxy. Nicholas's father, Alexander III, only fully accepted Alexandra as his future daughter-in-law when he was on his deathbed. Still, he did it in style and insisted on giving his blessing in full uniform. He died a few weeks later on November 1, 1894. Nicholas and Alexandra's wedding took place on November 26, 1894, but it was far from a picture-perfect day. With his father dead, Nicholas didn't want to wait until the official mourning period was over to marry Alexandra. As a result, the nuptials had very little pomp and circumstance, at least as far as royal weddings generally go. Mourning or not, Empress Alexandra was resplendent on her wedding day. Her grandfather, Prince Albert, had designed her veil, and she wore the magnificent Romanov nuptial crown on her head. Oh, and a 475-carat necklace, and earrings that had once belonged to Catherine the Great, not a woman known to skimp on spectacle. Less than a year after the wedding, Empress Alexandra had a baby girl, Olga, on November 15, 1895. Though the Tsar and Serena certainly needed to produce a male heir, they doted on the girl, and Nicholas remarked, "We're grateful she was a daughter. If she was a boy, she would have belonged to the people. Being a girl, she belongs to us." Empress Alexandra had something of a monster-in-law in Nicholas' mother, Maria Fyodorovna. Maria, who was never pro-Alexandra, was very possessive of her son, and made no secret of her disappointment. To make matters worse, Russian court rules dictated that Maria was higher in rank than Alexandra, so the dowager got to walk into every ball on her son's arm, while Alexandra trailed behind. On May 14, 1896, Nicholas and Alexandra were officially crowned as Tsar and Serena, but the day brought a disturbing omen. As a part of the official celebrations, commoners gathered in Kudinka Field in Moscow, only to riot when they thought there wouldn't be enough food. In the end, thousands of people were tragically trampled to death. The so-called Kudinka tragedy was bad enough, but the Tsar and Serena's reactions were even worse. The imperial couple still attended a ball that night and danced in their finery as if nothing had happened. In truth, Nicholas had wanted to call it off, and Alexandra wept when she heard the news, but advisers had urged them to carry on as normal. It was a fatal miscalculation. It only angered the mourning Russian people more, and they saw their Tsar and his German woman as utterly heartless. The Russian people never took to Empress Alexandra. She was naturally shy and reserved on the surface, which many people read as coldness. It didn't help that she spoke Russian with a heavy accent, or that her mannerisms were distinctly Teutonic. To the Russian people, Alexandra's biggest flaw was her inability to produce a male heir for the throne. Over 6 short years, she had 4 children, all girls. Each birth angered Russia even more, and Alexandra was so distressed that when her second daughter Tatiana was born, she burst into tears of disappointment. Her next, Marie, only made it worse. By the time their 4th girl, Anastasia, came into the world, a distraught Nicholas had to take a long walk to compose himself before he met his new daughter. Though you might assume that growing up a Romanov means beautiful clothes, jewels, and a luxurious lifestyle, the truth was much different. Empress Alexandra raised her children according to her own strict upbringing, which meant handing down clothes from daughter to daughter, making them sleep on iron beds, and forcing them to take daily cold baths. In 1904, the long-awaited miracle happened. Empress Alexandra finally gave birth to a boy, the Tsarevich Alexei. She called him her sunbeam and spoiled him for the rest of her life. Almost as soon as Alexei was born, Alexandra realized the horrific truth. The baby had hemophilia, her family's cursed disease. The Serena knew the illness's danger as well. It had already killed her brother and her uncle, and she was racked with grief and guilt over the news. Some even claimed she had a mental breakdown. Because of the seriousness of Alexei's condition, the Tsar and Serena treated their son's hemophilia as a state secret. Empress Alexandra only told her mother and sisters-in-law the truth almost a decade after he was born. All the Romanovs adored Alexei, and reportedly the mood of the whole Russian court often hinged on how the young, sickly prince was feeling. When he was healthy, the rest of his family was far more relaxed and pleasant, while his more serious episodes would fill everyone, especially Alexandra, with dread. Though Alexandra at first turned to conventional doctors to heal her son's sickness. As the years passed, she became increasingly obsessed with finding a cure in fringe mystics. Enter the notorious Grigory Rasputin. To her, this holy man was the only one who could cure her son. One of the more famous incidents involving Alexei and Rasputin occurred in 1912. After a jolt during a carriage ride, the young prince ruptured a still healing and life-threatening hematoma in his thigh. Frantic for her beloved son, Alexandra sent a telegram to Rasputin. He wrote back, urging her that God was looking after her child and commanding the doctors to leave him alone. Then a miracle happened. Amazingly, Alexei's bleeding ceased of its own accord a couple of days after Rasputin's letter came. Alexandra took it as divine intervention. She was staunchly loyal to Rasputin, even when almost everyone else in Russia despised him. When the police informed her with disgust that Rasputin had exposed himself in a restaurant, this arena dismissed it as gossip. Soon enough, all of Russia was spitefully whispering that Alexandra and Rasputin were engaged in an unholy affair. Though there's no evidence to support this, the damage was done. One British ambassador's daughter even claimed that aristocrats openly spoke in their drawing rooms of the need to assassinate Alexandra for the sake of the nation. Though the rumors about his affair with this arena were unfounded, Rasputin's real bedroom habits were even more scandalous. He had a reputation for his massive carnal appetite, and crowds of women followers would gather outside his apartment and wait days to meet him. In later years, nervous exhaustion and her many pregnancies made Alexandra listless and immobile. She ate and slept very little, had swollen feet, and took herbal medicine to strengthen her pulse. Judging by these symptoms, modern doctors believe this arena may have suffered from a thyroid condition called Graves' disease. The outbreak of World War I was the beginning of the end for Alexandra and her family. Not only was Russia plunged into an expensive and deadly conflict, but Alexandra's German roots also made her even more hated. The Russian people were starving, Rasputin still had a place in the court, and Alexandra was an incompetent governor while Nicholas was away at war. In 1917, it all inexorably led to the start of the Russian Revolution. Suddenly, this arena and her children were prisoners in their own palace, and the rebels forced Nicholas to abdicate the throne. The first months of the Romanov family's life after the revolution were spent in relative comfort, but in 1918 everything took a dark turn. The Bolsheviks took power and moved them to the Apatiev House, or what the revolutionaries called the House of Special Purpose. In Apatiev, the guards stripped them of all their privileges and royal titles. One of the more aggressive guards at the Apatiev House called the Tsar Nicholas the Blood Drinker, while Alexandra was the German witch. Although the Bolsheviks thought they took all of the Romanovs' jewels the moment they entered the House of Special Purpose, Alexandra had a secret up her sleeve. She had told her children to sew emeralds, diamonds, and other baubles into their clothes in case they could ever make a quick getaway and needed money. It was a shrewd idea, but it came back to haunt them in the most brutal way. Around midnight on July 17, 1918, Bolshevik Commandant Yakov Yurovsky ordered the family doctor to wake up all the Imperial Romanovs and bring them down to the basement of the house. Yurovsky then informed the former Tsar that they were condemned to death. That's when the firing started, but the execution went horribly, horribly wrong. Soldiers shot at an astonished Nicholas and Alexandra first, before taking aim at their children. In mere moments, chaos reigned as bullets filled the tiny room with smoke and noise. Yet when the dust settled, the soldiers made a gut-wrenching discovery. All the Romanov girls were still alive. The jewels in their clothing had somewhat protected them from the gunfire. Heartbreakingly, the soldiers had to perform the execution all over again until the deed was done. It took 20 excruciating minutes. In her last moments, the ever-pious Alexandra tried to bless herself with the sign of the cross. She was shot before she could complete the motion. The Romanovs suffered one of the most infamous ends in history, but they might have been saved. After the Russian Revolution, many people in the government wanted to get the royals out of Russia, but no one would take them. Then Nicholas's cousin, King George V of England, refused to grant them safe haven because he was afraid of the political repercussions. For years after the execution, rumors persisted that Princess Anastasia, or one of her siblings, had somehow escaped the massacre and were alive and well. Most famously, a woman named Anna Anderson showed up in a hospital in the 1920s and claimed she was Anastasia. She bore a striking resemblance to the lost princess, and some believed she could actually be her. Recent DNA testing of the Romanovs' remains, however, confirms the sad truth. Anna Anderson was not Anastasia, and all members of the imperial family died that day in July. Thanks for watching History Exposé. If you love uncovering the best stories in history, hit like and subscribe to keep exploring with us. Don't forget to visit our main page, Factor Nate, for more incredible facts about everything.